Hi, I'm Rachel Moriarty, an interior designer from San Diego, California, and you're watching A Student's Perspective.
Hi there, and thanks for tuning in to A Student's Perspective, the weekly series that connects students with designers, manufacturers, educators, industry professionals, and design media celebrities to hear their stories on just how they've gotten to where they are now. Through our conversations, we connect the past, present, and future of design to show just how much we can learn from each other to grow towards our fullest potential without prescribed limitations. Think of A Student's Perspective as a weekly design lecture series from the student's point of view. A Student's Perspective is a division of the nonprofit University Hall of Innovation, whose goals are to connect students with the design industry through design challenges and mentorship, and a collaboration with the Marywood University Interior Architecture Program in Scranton, Pennsylvania. All interviews can be found in their video format at www.astudentsperspective.tv. For more information or sponsorship inquiries, please contact University Hall of Innovation at gmail.com.
Welcome back to another episode of A Student's Perspective. My name is Paige.
And I'm Steven.
And today we're here with Rachel Moriarty of Rachel Moriarty Interiors. We had the pleasure of interviewing her almost 6 seasons ago and 3 years ago. Time has really passed, but we're excited to pick up this conversation and talk a little bit more about the present day. So I think before we get introduced to, I'd want to throw it back to the beginning just for the viewers that haven't seen season 2. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you first got into this career?
Yeah, my origin story, I always say that fashion was my gateway, my creative gateway into the design. I was a photo stylist and prop stylist, and as I had kids, I opened a boutique and started doing children's decor and doing nurseries. I had a boutique, and people would come in and they would ask me to design their nursery. And then they would ask for the big girls' room, and then they'd say, "Can you do my home office? Can you?" And it sort of like organically went from there. And then I went to work for some furniture companies, Ethan Allen and Bassett, and did some training in home staging. I've done it all. And then I just went into basically decorating and interior styling. And that was in the early 2000s. It's been about 20 years now. So I've done some different iterations, but officially launched Rachel Moriarty Interiors in 2015. And that was after a stint as a private banker, and I have never looked back. So that's what I'm doing now. And I sort of have, it's funny when you get into this industry, you don't really realize the opportunities that are there. And so the flagship is interior design projects, but I also work with other interior designers. I work with different brands as far as marketing, and I'm starting to do some product design. So that's what the business looks like now.
We're so excited to dive into some of those specifics and now the brand partnerships you're working on, but I think we'll save that towards the back end. But I kind of want to hear about the philosophy of Rachel Moriarty Interiors. And I think everyone knows you as just a statement and how you come across, just not only your physical persona, but your interiors are so bold and inspiring. I think you already gave us a little bit of background and how it's all culminated to this, but what kind of describes Rachel Moriarty Interiors, and how does all the evolution of people you've worked for previously kind of add to that, and what makes you guys unique?
It's really hard to describe Rachel Moriarty Interiors because there's like, I always think of Rachel Moriarty, I'm a maximalist, and nobody's ever going to hire me for my personal. People ask me what my style is. I'm like, nobody will ever hire me for my style, and it takes years and decades to create what I create, in my own home. But what mostly people come to me is they really want to self-express more boldly, and a lot of times I'll go into their home and they've made just a lot of safe decisions, the beige carpet and the tan walls and wood, and and they're like, get me out of Browntown, so they really are coming they want me to push them a little bit, you know. Of course, they end up resisting a little bit, but you know, so it's really just I think they find my brand and they see the way I kind of go in and I embody every project at the end. I love having, you know, fun with the photography, and they see something in that, and they kind of want that. They want to like live in this dream life that's in their head that they could never create for themselves. So I have a pretty unique clientele, which is really fun project.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that you don't know what you don't know what you need until it's already there, and so it's they live kind of vicariously through, because you have a good social media presence, and the styling of your photos and things like that. We were talking about that on the drive-in this morning. Is something that I think we don't see across the board in a lot of designers. Yeah, right. There's a lot more drama and a lot more kind of story, I think, behind some of your photo shoots, and I think that really helps.
It does help, because when I finished the project, so I worked in advertising, and I'm still working with my same photographers from 1995. Like, we've been working, so we have this shorthand, and we want to push ourselves as well. You know, when everyone was doing light and bright, we were just like, oh, I miss film, and I miss sun flare, and I miss, you know, and we were doing a little bit darker and moodier. Now I'm seeing everything trend towards that, which is actually really nice.
But you guys started it.
in 1995. Yes. So it's really fun, because it's like you have the design collaboration, and then we have the back end collaboration on how are we going to create a campaign of this project. So that's really fun too.
Yeah. Okay. I want to dive into that just because I think it's so special, these photo shoots that you have, and this is too deep into what we're already talking about. But the typical interior that we're seeing is these photorealistic, extreme hybrids that are just trying to give you the detail in what you're seeing in the interior, but yours push so beyond that. And I think that goes to show that your photographer has some background in, let's say, photographing people in portraits, and then having you interact with your spaces within some of those interior shoots is beautiful.
She brings a photojournalistic quality to, you know, because she does weddings and stuff like that. So she's always had this strong eye, even when we were working in fashion. She just sees the world differently. And so what I do is I go in and I just need my hero shots. Like, I need that straight shot and that straight shot and that straight shot, and then you go in and she'll go in and detail everything out and do these tight vignettes, and I just let her do whatever she's going to do. And if I'm doing a Spanish home, I want her to get environment, and I want to pull in and make it just very editorial, you know. I want to see little details of wood and, you know, just elements of architecture too. So we really both enjoy it.
Yeah, I think that's the difference between a product shot that's looking at selling that one specific thing, but you're selling the lifestyle, you're selling the environment, you're selling the story, and trying to bring someone in. It's like you're almost creating like a still movie where it's like someone can lose themselves in that image, and I think that's really important. I mean, we were talking about a few of your images where it's you're in the space and it's you kind of like blurred, flitting through the space, and to find you as your persona as a designer expressed in those images, I think is really beautiful and really important, because I think a lot of designers are just like, okay, this is what I do, and I'm just going to stand over here, or I'm going to stand in front of my design. And so I think you find that happy medium in between there.
And we also love when people have pets and their pets come into the photo shoot and they're like, come here, you know, and we're like, no. You know, we want that as well. We want the space to feel lived in, either, you know, by bringing a person into it or the client's pet. So you're going to see one or the other.
So those typical photo shoots, I think there's a stigma around when interiors actually happen. It's like the whole day shuts down. Sometimes it can take up to a week to do those photo shoots. How does that planning kind of look for you?
Mine aren't like that, because I think what happens is a lot of designers don't design to decoration. I design to decoration, so I basically need to bring in fresh fruit and fresh flowers.
Right.
Everything else, that's how the house looks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where a lot of people finish with construction, and then they have to bring in all of the staging. Yeah, exactly. And then hope that the client buys some of the stuff, and only have to take half of it out or whatever.
Or a lot of the times the clients don't even enjoy half of that stuff because it's not personal to them, or it doesn't have any meaning in the space.
So what I'll do is just pull out just a few personal, pregnancy photo or whatever, you know what I mean? But but really the space, that's how the space looks.
Yeah. Okay, so toning it back, I thought it was really special that when you talked about your photographer, I know we say she has that great interaction with her as well, but you also let her take the hand in having her role when it comes to that, because that's her niche and that's what she does.
Yeah.
So I will preface this by saying Paige is also a photographer.
Oh, okay.
So there's a passion to this as well.
Awesome.
So,
that's
and I'm also very passionate about her photography specifically because I do weddings, but I also shoot interiors because
that's awesome.
Obviously interior design, it's my core,
is a different philosophy that you're going to hear from other designers are going to say, get an architectural photographer.
Yes.
And I think in some cases that's great, but I want story in mine, so I think I think you just can't really listen to other people, you know what I mean? Sometimes you really just have to go with what you love, and I love that process, and I love that collaboration with her, and I love seeing her do her thing after I'm like, you got my 4 shots, do your thing, and she just I just love it. That's just fun, playing with lighting and stuff like that. So
it's just not the atypical. And now I've been on several interior photo shoots between my own work and others, and seeing everyone's process is entirely different. And to some, it's very point blank, and you don't get the meaning of the shot or why are we here? Why are we in this exact spot and gonna take 3 hours to set up the shoot?
Right.
And it's just for the clips of the. It just gets a little bit too fashion forward, I guess. And not quite having that experiential background to any of it.
Yeah.
But that interaction, so
yeah, and we, at the end of last season, we spoke with a photographer who does product shots. He works with Heller, he works with Design Within Reach, and he does everything. And his background, where he started, is in fashion. And so that was one of the things that Paige had talked to him about, was just how you carry that forward. He's like, I shoot my interiors and my product shots from a fashion eye. And so they are different, and there is a richness to it that I think is missing in a lot of things. And so, I mean, there's probably people who are going to respond to one or the other a little bit more. They're like, okay, that's a little bit too much, or that's.
But that's okay, because that's what I'm trying to do. That's by design.
Absolutely.
If you're not vibing with what I'm putting out, that's all of me, and that's all part of it. So, I think I'm always magnetizing and repelling people, and so, and I even will push it a little bit. I'm sure you've seen pictures of me being a little sexy, you know what I mean? And so, I want people to see that too, and I think I'm also doing that because as somebody in her mid-50s, I don't want people to think that you could disappear. You get invisible at 50. I'm like, no, we're getting even better, and I'm like, and I will prove it to you. So that's part of, and that's, it has nothing to do with interior design, but it has to do with me, and so that's sort of a fun thing that we like to do too.
Yeah, and I think the best keyword for that is authentic. And from the time that we first met, that's all that I've ever been able to say with you is every part of your business, of your life, of the way you present yourself on social media and everything else, it is you. It's not you don't turn it off. And you don't amp it up. It's like, this is you.
Exactly.
This is you all the time. And I think that's really beautiful.
And I always just use this one line. I'm like, and if you don't like it, you need not apply. We don't need to work together.
You'll see her down the street, and you can then cross.
Exactly.
It's fine. But you'll be the only one that does, because everybody else is flocking towards her. So
So something similar to what Jim had talked about in our last episode was just that not following this atypical trend watching and currently following the status quo. And I think maybe that relates back to your photography photo shoots, but I think that's the core of your brand identity as well. How do you kind of react to always needing to know the current of what's going on? And I think you can think about this loosely, but also a little bit more detailed. I think in terms of authenticity, that you stick to your core, and it's not always about what the person besides you is doing.
Right. Oh, God, no. I think it's important to know the trends because they're investing a lot of money. So, trends take a long time. So if something's starting and then you're starting to see it in a more real way, like when I see color going into appliances and stuff, those are real investments. Right. Appliances, people keep them forever, and so then I'm like, okay, this might really be something that's, it's not just me just liking color. Like, this is a real thing. And so helping people make those decisions. I always say we're here, I want it to last. I want it to go, 20 years. And so I use trends to sort of make some of those decisions. I think it's super important to be informed about them, but trends are different than fads.
Yeah.
I think it's important to know what the trends are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then to realize that trends start like that, and it could be one person that says, okay, no, this is what it's going to be, and then the second person jumps onto it. So there's never necessarily a lot of meat and a lot of universality to those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And so we could meet with you right now and say, okay, this is what I'm seeing as the trend, and then we meet with somebody later and we're like, no, I see the exact opposite, and we're like, okay. And so it's really it's about what that next person wants to do.
But the other thing, as a brand, I think it's important to have thoughts about trends.
Absolutely.
Because media is important, and people come to you if you have a point of view that's a little bit different. They want to hear, what do you think about this? Or what is even your reaction? And so I think it's important.
And so I think that segues into your experience at market, because I think over the past couple markets I've noticed I think it's changed for you a little bit. You've been doing panels, you've been doing this market, you were doing a design spot tour, yes. And so how has that evolution been, and how have you kind of found it?
Again, you have to have a point of view, and then so for the Insiders Tour, I want to show designers places. I stay out of the towers, I stay out of the main. I'm like, you guys, please go in them and spend all your time in there, but we're not doing that. That you can navigate that yourself. I want to take you to the outskirts, because it took me so many markets to get out of the two main. I was so nervous, so overwhelming, and now that I've got it down and I've made great relationships, and I know where to find unique things, but also that can be you can put regular upholstery. It's still wonderful products, and you can back it down a little bit, but it's so inspiring. Like Design Legacy, have you ever been into Cali? Oh, you should go in there. It's so amazing. So I'll stay a little bit on the outskirts, and then and show them lots of bold color. I just want them to feel like, oh my gosh, you can do this, And they always ask me is it too much, So we kind of talk through the process as well, which is really fun.
Right.
And so these showrooms, they're epitome of all of these pieces pulled together, and I think these spaces are making that statement. How do you feel about how they pulled together them specifically? I mean, not imagining them within a residential space, because you're pulling specific pieces, you're drawing in color, and I think you've mentioned this on our last podcast, how maybe you start with a neutral base and you individually pull pieces to tastefully add this color in. But what's the impact of these showrooms that has it all?
Oh, I love it. I'm always like this. If I was a showroom, this would be me. This is the inside of my brain. If I could do this, especially Design Legacy is a perfect analogy of what the inside of my brain. It's full Technicolor, crazy, But when you're talking about a design client, it's different. It is different, and it's their home. And so I always start with a neutral palette, and I bring in things that can be easily changed out, because I'm a commitment phobe. So, I like to use, especially with the pillows and throws and accents, change those out. Invest in your big pieces, but I always try to leave a little room. And, every once in a while they do bring me back to refresh, and I'm like, oh my gosh, the sofa is still awesome. And I can just work with it, and so I love it. I think it's a great way to design.
I think that we were the not the greatest pair to have our dress ensemble today.
We're the
or
good
at least we rolled
contrast.
up today and had this
Right.
embarrassment. I at least did. I'm like, why did I choose my all black outfit when we're talking to Rachel? It was
I
just
love it.
a poor
I love
choice
it.
on our behalf. But these are our staples.
Right.
And we might need you to pull in
But
some
it
color
makes
here and
sense.
there.
Like, you know, if this was a room, I'd put like a statement necklace, and you know what I mean. I would just it's perfect.
Yeah, okay. At least I'm girl.
Excuse me. So, on your tours and in these kind of looking at the outskirts of market, so can you give viewers who maybe haven't been to market yet or are looking to come to market, what are a couple places besides Design Legacy maybe that
the secrets?
Yeah, like that you have introduced people or you've discovered or you found that it's like, okay, this is someplace that you need to come and check out.
I think it's important to find. I always take them to Norwalk. I love Norwalk. I love the way they display the showroom. It's always different every time I go in, but it's great upholstery and case goods, you know. And so I think it's really important. I would even say find something to go narrow and deep. Don't be overwhelmed. Just because there's so many doesn't mean you need to have so many accounts. Like find someone you love and just go narrow and deep with them. That would be one. I love Schwung. Have you ever been there?
We haven't, but we've been hearing a lot about it. Yes.
So that a place like Schwung is a great place to get. They bring things in from Marrakesh and global things and vintage things and one-of-a-kind things, and those are great. You can buy them, you know, one-offs and have them sent to you. You know, unique pieces as well. So I think that's great. And then there's a place called Splashworks. Do you know about them? And that's custom art, but they also do acoustic panels, which I think is so important.
Just hearing about that.
Yeah, with you know, podcasting now or people working from home, you need some of that, you know, sound absorption. Yeah. You can do it in a pretty way. I'm like, no egg crates, no black egg crates anymore. You're a recording studio or something. You know, my husband's like got the egg crates in his space where he, you know, plays music and stuff, and I'm just like, oh my God. We have an agreement, but there is a very beautiful way or stylistic way that you can do it. So I love that. I love Splashworks.
Yeah, and so to let everyone know, there's 2 million square feet of showrooms in High Point, and so I've been coming since 2015. Rachel's been coming about the same time.
Yes,
and we have never seen it all.
You can't.
And you never will. But there is something for everybody, and there's very traditional and there's very avant-garde, and there's a lot of stuff that happens in between there. And so I think just seeing the evolution of market, I think, has been really nice.
Yeah.
Like over these past couple of years. So I mean, coming back out of COVID and whatnot, I mean, everything has rebounded, at least from what I've seen.
It feels back to normal,
the crowds are here, the product is here, everything.
The food's out
busy.
again.
Yeah. That's an important thing.
Yes, it really is.
Yeah. And the conversations here, that's what's just so weird for me, is to be able to actually network again and actually just have these face-to-face communications.
100%.
And that's what we miss most about market, or at least what I always do.
Yeah.
Okay, so you talked a little bit about those partnerships with some of these vendors, and you said how it's okay to keep the consistency with some of the similar brands and utilize these people that have always relied, or you've relied on, and they've relied on you for maybe your purchasing. Can you talk a little bit about that and how some of those partnerships mean so much to the way that you design?
Well, I'm a really small firm. I'm mostly Rachel firm.
Yeah.
But I personally have to work with design centers because it's just, they're almost like an arm of my business. But the brands know that I'm ordering their product through them. So it's important. That's why I like to come here and look at stuff myself, even though I'm placing orders through multi-line showrooms. On Instagram, when I'm sharing projects out, I tag all the vendors. I want them to know that I'm spending money with them and specifying their products. Yeah, exactly. And then and then when I have a tour or something like that, I can do an ask and say, can I bring my buyers and can you feed us? Can you give us Prosecco? So I think it is important, it really is.
Yeah, and I think what's so special too is that you are primarily solely Rachel. You have to depend on all these vendors.
Yes.
And similar to the way that you said you trust your photographer to take her niche and run with it, we rely on our vendors and the partnerships that we grow here, not just through the furnishings or the accents, but through contractors and subcontractors and the people that you talk to daily.
Exactly.
That's a huge relationship that has to be met. And I think that's something that viewers should learn a little bit more about and how important these connections are. I mean, we talk about the day-to-day of making relationships with the industry and growing that potential, but when you're working in the field, just keeping all the consistency of those relationships is extremely important.
So important.
Yeah.
So important. And I think coming to High Point Market is so important too, honestly.
That's what we try to hammer into everyone.
It changed my business. It really changed my business because you don't know what you don't know. Even though I had worked in the furniture industry, you just come through and you're so inspired and you're like, I want to do a project where I specify that
just
chair.
that, yeah.
You know what I mean? And it kind of like you catalog it, and it ends up happening kind of quickly, So I think it just ups your game, it ups your projects, and I think it's awesome.
For me, it's even seeing products that you've already specified or and just things you recognize around different showrooms is also so special.
Yes.
Sometimes you don't always get to see. You're looking at a picture online for a few days, or you're inspired by that, but then seeing it in person and then seeing it right next to something you never considered it to, it's like it brings everything full circle for you.
And it kind of makes hotels a little funny because now you go through hotels and you're like, oh, that's four hands.
Yeah.
Oh, you can literally spot everything in there. It's so funny. I love it.
That's just a designer's mind.
I know.
In general, between the lighting, between the flooring.
It's ruined everything, every experience.
Well, yeah, as a faculty, I was talking to my wife not too long ago, and I said, I have to critique everything that I see, just because it's like I'm used to my students giving me something and being like, okay, well, I can't just say, okay, that's great.
Exactly.
I've got to find a thing that can get better. And
Exactly.
so when I walk through showrooms, it's like, oh gosh,
Yeah.
okay. It's like this could be a little bit taller. This could be a little. I was like, please, nobody ask me a question,
Right.
because
Exactly.
So yeah, that's an interesting kind of.
I'm comfortable having uncomfortable conversations.
Right. And so now you're foraying into the other end of the spectrum, and you've got some licensing deals that have launched, and some maybe that are in the works and things like that. So do you want to talk about how that process has been and what the reception has been like?
So Dave Cohen, who's a mutual friend of ours, found a small mirror company downstairs called Moriarty, and he's Jamie Jaffe out of Alabama, and he just thought this would be a perfect pairing. And Jamie does these custom distressed mirrors. They're really cool, and he prints on them. And so Dave was like, go meet him. I met him. We hit it off right away. And I'm not an artist, but I'm a digital hoarder. So I'm always like hoarding patterns and just copyright free. It could be from the Byzantine era or something like that. I'm always looking at graphics, and I have like files and files of stuff. And his background was in graphic design, so I will sometimes curate like a collection and send it over to him, and then he will like rescale and color, and we are like mad scientists working together. And so it's a very small space. It's in Market Suites at Market Square. But I launched last market with 5 SKUs, and we refreshed. We dropped a couple, and then we added a couple for this one. So I have just about 7 SKUs in there.
See, that just pushes the collaboration that you've already talked so freely about.
Yeah,
merging your creative mind with the graphic designer. It just seems like the perfect happy medium.
It's what I need because I see some product designers that are true artists, and they're taking their abstracts and they're making wallpaper and fabric, and I'm like, I can't do that,
But you are an artist at your core. You are.
And that's what. And it's so funny because so many of my friends that are designers and product designers, they're like, Rachel, I see your projects. You do custom murals and all this. You're constantly doing it with your designer hat on it, and for some reason, it's been getting comfortable with the product designer hat, and thinking in my mind, it's like somebody walking around with a sketchbook and a pencil pencil and like, sketching things out all the time, which isn't my process. So I've been getting more comfortable with, trying to do that role because I would like to do more.
Yeah, I think one of the things I try to stress to my students when we talk about product design and we talk about these types of things is that when you're coming from a different avenue, right? So coming as an interior designer, coming as an interior architecture kind of background, you've been so concerned with the human experience and how they exist in a space and the story that happens, that anything that you design, any product, any graphics, any things, that's always there of how you interact with that, as opposed to, and nothing against product designers or furniture designers, but sometimes you're not necessarily have that individual client in mind of what that experience is going to be like. I take it back. I just was giving a lecture about Charles Rennie Mackintosh. And it's like absolutely beautiful designs, but he did not care if you could sit in one of his pieces for more than 10 seconds. It was just, it was all about the design. So I think what I've noticed is the interior designers, they come at it with a more humanistic approach to it from the start. And I think that really helps to craft something that just has more life to it, and is just, it's easier for, I think, people to really receive.
It's a very thoughtful procedure. But so you already said that you want to kind of proceed in that direction. What do you see moving forward, like with products? And I know mirrors that fell into your lap. Is there something you would dream of?
Well, I think it would be, for me, anything that's in that realm of like color and pattern. So I think and I don't know how it will happen at this point, but like I would see fabric and wallpaper and rugs and, just fun accents where I can incorporate that.
Right. And if you haven't seen Rachel's Instagram, I think everyone needs to go to Rachel Moriarty Interiors, because that's what I gravitate towards, is the textures and the combination of fabrics and color and the grandiose use of all of it. And I mean, I see it in your outfit as well, and I think it just portrays through everything you do. And I think that's what the goal that every interior designer looks to achieve, but sometimes I think finding your voice kind of takes a little bit of pushing.
You have to use it to find it, and that's, I think, a lot of people's problems is they keep it all inside, and they're like, how do I get to there? Rachel Moriarty of 2015.
I was just going to say, how much has it changed?
So shy, like I couldn't do anything, and then I started doing Facebook Lives, and I did a year and a half of them every single day when it first came out, and then it was like I found my voice by using it, and so that would be a tip that I would give.
It's hot great.
Tip.
I almost want to see us watch our season 2 episode and watch us now, because all three of us have changed. The two of us necessarily weren't on this side of end of things interviewing, but I mean, utilizing your voice and your platform as often as possible. We've watched your Facebook Lives. We've seen you every other day. How do you utilize social media now as things have changed?
So I think it's so important, especially with AI coming out. Honestly, I think we're going to go back to like a little more of a raw. I think that raw and real. Because what I notice is like, I do post on my feed, but where the most fun happens is in my stories. Because that's where I'm like giving my daily updates. I'm heading to a job site. It's like, it's just that glimpse into your
authentic
life. Exactly. I'm packing for market. I'm these are my outfits I put together or whatever. It's like stuff that really has nothing to do with anything,
I'm running 30 minutes late, but I have my coffee.
Exactly. All of that. Like it's I always say it's a party in my DMs. I really love the story aspect of it. And I love and it's another, for me, creative expression, because you could do GIFs and music and, do all these, it's a fun thing. I enjoy it. So I'm in my stories a lot. And I'm in my feed consistently too, but I feel like the real stuff happens. And I think it'll start trickling, almost like TikTok. It'll start trickling onto the feed more. Because it's going to be super important with AI, especially knowing that the real life projects.
Yeah, it's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
I think it's a perfect opportunity to talk when you're mentioning finding your voice and everything is something that we're involved involved with now. You've been involved with for a while now. I will be just starting with, but DAA. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that is and kind of how that got started and where you see that progressing from now?
Yeah. So DAA stands for Diversity Advocacy Alliance, and I'm one of the 18 founding members of it. It's in collaboration with High Point Market Authority, a social innovation company called Change Often, and then designers and industry people of color. And I'm Mexican, Filipino, and Native American. And that, I think, has always, as well as travel, has always influenced my designs. And I think I think diversity brings it brings interest. It's different when you look at a person of color's designs. It just feels different. And in High Point in the South, it's not always been so open as it is now. I mean, I don't think it's a big secret. And our alliance is really like doing radical acceptance. Like, okay, here's where we are, and what are we going to do going forward? Like, let's not look back. Let's move forward. So we've created 4 subcommittees, and part of it's education, mentorship. I'm trying to remember. That's why I'm like looking.
Right.
I'm like
yeah, scrolling back.
I know. I'm like, what are those? Awards and recognition, and I can't remember the other one. But what we're doing is like for awards and recognition, which is my subcommittee. I don't know as much about the other ones because I'm not in them as much. But we want to recognize showrooms that have been very welcoming to Black designers and designers of color, and maybe even have a way of like showing in a window of a showroom that this is we are open and accepting, and because I don't have the experience as much, but hearing it from Black designers, they don't always feel super comfortable. They haven't always felt welcome. And so if we can identify showrooms that are like, come in. We love to work with everyone. That would be great. Also, recognizing mentors in the industry would be awesome. And then you're going to be working in the education, which is already your realm anyway. Right. So that was a no-brainer. But we're really looking forward, and hoping that when other showrooms see that this showroom signed on and is recognized by our committee, that they'll come along too, or and maybe change in their internally in their businesses. So
and we had a bit of a launch discussion last market, and one of the things that I thought was really nice was that it's looking at diversity not just as a kind of a BIPOC idea, but it's also thinking about at market. It's the students too, because young designers, whether it's interracial kind of ideas or if they're just young. I know when I first started teaching, I would walk into a classroom and everybody would be like, okay, wait, where's the teacher? When are you coming in? What's that? And so I think youth becomes that idea of diversity too. And so I think that's something that is going to be really nice.
And the other side of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Exactly.
So the age ranges. Yeah. So I think it's really going to be an interesting way forward and seeing how things kind of progress. Because for the past couple markets that I've been coming to, it's always been something that's just been talked about, and it's you'll hear little pockets of it. But I think the coming together as an organization and that idea of strength in numbers and whatnot, I think has been really nice, and it's been received very well. And it's not as a way of saying, okay, it's like, okay, the other kind of way we're coming in, but we just want it all to kind of come together, and I think it's been really
We always
sort of
make
beautiful.
this reference back, you'll probably remember, you probably won't. But do you remember Benetton, that brand?
Absolutely, yeah,
We're
United
always
Colors,
thinking
yeah.
like the United Colors of Benetton. Like,
Right.
do you remember that? Like, that's how we like to think of ourselves,
Yeah.
you know, everything. So, you know, and we have as a collective, we have a strong buying power here, you know, and so we want that to be recognized as well. So, you know, I think it's going to be a great thing moving forward. I'm really happy to be on it, and it's a year commitment. I just re-upped for another year. But, you know, for me, it's important to be there because I don't know any Filipino famous designers. You know what I mean? I really don't. And so when we launched at Last Market, and I always say my ethnicity now, and there were a couple of girls, and they were like, "That's me down there," and they came up to me afterwards, and they were like, I didn't know there were others. There were others out there. So I think it's just out there, just being visible and making, being a way shower for some. There may be, some students that we didn't grow up with interior design. I didn't even know it was a thing until much later in life. So I think that's for me the really important, just to be there, visibility wise, and for me, when I see something, I'm like, okay, I could do that, or I could be that, and I think it's important to be that person for others. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
And coming from the younger generation, we more than anything appreciate your transparency and your vulnerability. And I think, being able to spread that to the younger generation is so important. And I've seen, I guess, the way our education was in the past few years, and doing everything to represent anti-racial things, and promoting as much as we can through schooling. And I can recall, I can't remember all the names of the events that we kind of held at Marywood in past years, but pushing designers and pushing to learn about Black designers and the presence that they've had, and the platform that they didn't have during their times of beautiful creations and designs.
Yes.
And now learning more and more about it. But I think that gives me a lot of hope for the next coming generation.
Oh yeah, we have hope. We have hope in you.
There's a big chip on our shoulder that needs to be filled. But
I love it.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, and I think another reason we love this platform of being able to speak to people about this and hear it more and more.
Important.
But the market has changed within the past 5 years, and it's changed in the past 10 years. But
and High Point Market Authority has been supporting us in such a big way. Like they are so on board, and I'm excited for what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think one of the things that what we've always tried to do with this is to show students that there's not necessarily a linear path to anything in life. And so Paige she went to a panel yesterday, a keynote, and got to hear from the Lloyd kind of designers and Joanna Gaines.
I was there, girl. I was there.
But she came back and she's like, and so she was talking about how it's like, I fail, and I suffer from imposter syndrome, and I do things, and so many people think that anybody who is above a certain level, it's like, okay, they don't go through the same things that I go through on a daily basis, and they don't understand. But I think these kind of opportunities to where these younger designers are going to see designers of color, and they're going to see people who've had experiences, had success, who have gone through all kinds of stuff to get
been
there.
Discriminated against.
But
you are
now at the top of your game, and you're able to make that next generation understand, like, okay, and it's never a I had it hard, so you're gonna have it hard, or I had it hard, so you don't have to. But it's just like, this is what I did, this is what you're gonna have to do. Like, use anything that I've
it's
experienced.
It's a constant building community. It's
absolutely.
what I've appreciated about everyone I come across, no matter what age, size. Like, it's always been, how can I build you up and how can I teach you?
Exactly.
And mentorship has been the key of everything, and Stephen has been my greatest mentor through it all. But meeting designers like you is just incredible to hear your experiences and hear where you can grow and the hardships you will always face along the way. The fact that you're willing to teach us through and through means a lot.
Oh, thank you.
So at that point, we can segue into our normal final question. So I don't know if you want to handle this one.
Okay, yes, we must end
prep me?
of all No, I'm pretty sure you got it
You've done
3
it
years
before.
ago,
Did
I think.
Yeah.
So what type of advice would you give to current and future students in the design industry any type of advice at all that has helped you throughout your career? And maybe it's more so a life mentorship in general, but what do you recommend?
I think we just touched on it. I would find I call them expanders. So for me, it was like Justina Blakeney. I didn't know I wanted to be like Justina Blakeney until I saw Justina Blakeney, so it's really, so, going to keynotes like we went to, seeking that information out and just being like, wow, I could see that. And it expanded me into thinking I could do products and other things, influencer type things. So I think that would be the best thing. 'Cause it's like, once you see it, it kind of gives you clarity and then you can go for it.
And
you can always iterate, you can always iterate and find, if you have ADHD like me, find your next one, and then, I'm going to go that way now. So it always is kind of a way shower for me when I find somebody doing what I want to be doing.
Right. Okay, so we already have plugged her last time, but I was going to say if there's anywhere else we can find you on social medias between your Instagram lives and...
I think that's it. Rachel Moriarty Interiors in all the places. Yes.
Awesome. Fantastic.
Exactly. Thank you.
All right. Well, Rachel, thank you so much for sitting down with us again. We really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to like, follow, and subscribe. And make sure to follow along next week as
the conversation continues from a student's perspective.
We hope you liked this discussion with the design industry from a student's perspective. Please like, share, and comment, and stay tuned for more inspiring conversations to come.